pleasure to be here this morning. Beautiful New York City. To my right, Melissa DeRosa, Secretary to the Governor. To my left, Dr. Howard Zucker, Commissioner, New York State Department of Health. Let's talk about where we are today. On day 105 of the coronavirus crisis and day 20 of the aftermath of Mr. Floyd's murder. We're dealing with both situations. They're separate and they're important and critical in and of themselves. And then there's an intersection where the two issues run into each other. I'm pleased to report today that New York State has made great progress on both issues. We'll talk about them individually. On the civil unrest issue after Mr. Floyd's murder, I said from day one that I stand with the protesters. New York State is the progressive capital of the nation, and we pride ourselves on that, and we work to be that. And being the progressive capital means not just articulating progressive goals, right? If you really want to be the progressive capital, you have to lead with action that is progressive. And all the greats have said that from day one. It's not merely articulation, it's action. That is the art form. Bayard Rustin, the proof that one truly believes is in action. That's how you get measured in life. That's what the history books have all taught us. So New York is leading with real reform. The New York State Legislature came back last week and passed nation-leading legislation, transparency of disciplinary records, what we call here in New York 50A, laws banning chokeholds, institutionalized the Attorney General as a special prosecutor, false race-based 9/11 calls, and the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative, which I signed an executive order to enact. Now, the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative is a major step forward, and I believe it's a moment to turn the page on this entire issue. We've seen the protests, we've seen the demonstrations. The people of this nation have made their voice heard. They are outraged after Mr. Floyd's murder. The formula that works is demonstration, protest, make your case, then make change, legislation, institutionalize the point that you were making, and then reconciliation. Demonstration, legislation, reconciliation. Reverend Sharpton was here yesterday, and those were his words. He's exactly right. Protest, demonstrate, show the outrage, show the frustration, and then do something about it. That's the legislation. It's not about protesting for the sake of protesting. It's protesting to make change. The change comes in the legislation. And that's what we have to remember. That's what it means to be a progressive state. Yes, articulate, and now act. And that's where we are in New York. Now is the time for every community to put pen to paper and enact systemic reform. Take that anger and frustration that we saw in the demonstration, and now I'm saying to every community, we have 500 police forces in this state alone, 18,000 nationwide. Okay, what do you want in terms of reform? What changes do you want? And what do you want policing to look like in the year 2020? Put pen to paper, sit down, redesign the police force for the year 2020. What functions do you want it to undertake? What budget do you want it to have? What is the staffing that you want it to have? What is your use of force penalty? How should they handle crowd management? Concerns about demilitarizing the police. What do you mean by demilitarizing the police? What equipment do you want them to have and not have? That's the function that every community has to go through And that's the function and the process that we outlined in the New York State Reform Collaborative. Collaborative meaning government sits down with the community and does it together. It's not that government gives us their vision of what the police should look like, because we have government's vision of what the police should look like. It's called the current police. Bring the community to the table, have the conversation, and come up with a redesigned police force for the year 2020. Come up with the reforms you actually want in specifics and remake your police force. That's the stage that we're in New York. And it's for your community, New York City. You tell us what policing looks like in 2020 in New York City. Nassau County, you tell us what a police department looks like in 2020. Suffolk County, you tell us. Buffalo, you tell us. Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, Utica, you tell us. County by county, city by city, what police force do you want? We heard you. You're right. We agree with you, protesters. Now, tell us what the police force should look like. And let's do that over the next 9 months. Why 9 months? It takes 9 months to give birth. And we're going to birth a new vision for a police force, community by community, because there is no one size fits all. It's what that community wants. And New York City may want something different than Suffolk, may want something different than Erie, and that's fine, because it's for that community to decide. At the table, activists, stakeholders, police, government officials, you design your police force, and you do it now. How do we know they'll do it? If you don't do it, local government, you won't get any state funding. Period. We're not going to tell you what to do, but we'll tell you that you have to go through the process. And you have to pass a law with your redesigned police force. And you have to do it by April 1, or you don't get state funding. If you don't want state funding, then you don't have to do it. I don't believe there's a city or a county in this state that will say they don't want state funding. But that's the incentive to actually go through the process of redesigning the police. April 1 is the drop dead date. Again, I'm not telling them what it should look like. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying it's up for the community, that government, to pass a law redesigning their police force, taking into consideration the dialogue that we've all been having over the past few weeks. And look, it has to be done anyway. We don't really have a choice, because no police department can function, not in this state, not in this nation, if it doesn't have the trust and respect of the community. It does not work either way. If you don't have the trust or the respect, it's not going to work. You know, the police force is a function of what the community wants. The community pays for the police. The police don't exist despite the community. The police exist because that community wants them. And if that community that is funding them with their tax dollars want a different police force, then they'll have a different police force. They're not going to pay for a police force that they don't want. And if they don't want that police force, it's not going to work anyway. And that's where we are. The relationship is broken in many of these communities. Some communities it's fine. But in the communities that want a different relationship, design it, define it, do it over the next 9 months, and then enact it into law. Take this moment and make change. That's what this is all about, restoring the respect and trust. On reopening, we're following the data. The data that we should be watching now is the testing data. We've talked about hospitalization data and ICU data and tracing. It's the day-to-day tests. We do 50,000 tests per day across the state. You know what the tests were yesterday, city by city, county by county. Look at that data. That's what's gauging our reopening. And it's visible, it's on the website, and literally day by day. So you take New York City, yesterday was 1.7%, but you can see it over the week. Monday was 1.8. That's when New York City started to open. 1.5, 1.7, 1.5, 1.7. Great. You'll see little deviations, little fluctuations. It'll be up a little bit, it'll be down a little bit. That's fine. What you do want to watch is if you see it start ticking up and continue to tick up, right? We're looking for a direction more than anything else. But you see it by region, and then you have a breakdown within that region so you can drill down on the numbers. In New York City, it's by borough. You look at the Bronx. When we opened, it was 2.3, then 2.1, 2.4, 1.6, 1.8. Okay, up a little bit, down a little bit, but you see it's basically constant. That's what we want to be watching. That's what's gauging our reopening. All the news is good. All the news is very, very good. Number of hospitalizations, lowest since March 20th. That's when this nightmare began. So we've done it. We have tamed the beast. We are now 180 degrees on the other side. The best number, lowest number of deaths that we have seen since this started. And that is the number I know turns my stomach and turns everyone's stomach in this state. This is the number that is the most painful, and it is the lowest level since this started. The people of this state, by their actions, have saved thousands of lives. That is not overly dramatic. That is not rhetorical. That is not metaphorical. That is factual. They saved thousands and thousands of lives. Moving forward, Western New York is expected to move to phase 3 on this Tuesday. Capital Region should move to phase 3 on Wednesday. But as usual, we have to stay smart, look around the nation, and look at what is going on. We're not in a vacuum. This virus spreads. As we learned the hard way, saw cases in California for weeks when this started before they came here. Look at the signs across the country. And the signs across the country are frightening. The COVID virus is increasing in just about half the states. Half the states, it's going up. You have 14 states that have seen a 25% increase in the past week. Think about that. This is a frightening time. We thought that we were past it. Well, the beast is rearing its ugly head. Half the states are seeing an increase. 14 states, a 25% increase this past week. Be careful. Be careful. New York is the anomaly. New York is exactly the opposite. All the other states, virtually all the other states, reopened and saw the number go up, right? They all have the same chart. Reopening and the number goes up. New York, we're coming down, we reopen, the number continues to drop. That is anomalous to the rest of the nation. Our infection rate, which is the key number, how fast the virus is spreading, our rate of transmission, that's the most important factor in all of this. How fast is the virus spreading? We were spreading at the highest rate in the nation when this started. We are now at the lowest rate in the nation. Think about that. You want to talk about a dramatic turnaround. New York was in the worst situation. Highest number of cases, fastest rate of transmission. 100 days later, either the lowest rate of transmission in the nation or one of the lowest rates of transmission in the nation. From the worst infection rate to the best. That's what New Yorkers accomplished. The most dramatic turnaround in the country. We're looking for comparisons. It may be one of the most dramatic turnarounds on the globe dealing with this COVID virus. But you can literally rank states by their rate of transmission. And this is an independent website. Has New York literally as the lowest rate of transmission in the United States of America, 0.77, which means it's under 1. 1 is the demarcation line for rate of transmission. Over 1, which means one person is infecting more than one other person, that's what they call outbreak. It means you've lost control of the virus. Under 1, you're containing the virus. We are 0.77, lowest rate of transmission in the United States. And that's all a function of what New Yorkers have done, nothing else. For local governments, I had the local governments on the telephone yesterday on what we call the regional control groups. The local governments have a vital role here, and they have to do it. The local governments have to enforce compliance. It's not popular, it's not fun. Everybody wants to be out, everybody wants to reopen, everybody wants freedom. I get it. Discipline matters. Local governments have to do their job. They have to enforce compliance. They have to study their local data. When they find those positive cases, they have to trace those cases back. Where are people getting the virus? Are they getting it at work? Are they getting it at a restaurant? Are they getting it on the street corner? Are they getting it at protests? That's the function for the local government. And when you see a cluster in that infection rate, the local governments have to attack it. I know it's tedious, but it's also very important. And I said to the local governments frankly yesterday, this is their job. And if they don't do their job, then they're going to have a really unpopular task, which is explaining to their local community why they have to slow or stop the reopening. You have some states that are now stopping the reopening. That is the last thing anybody wants to do, and that is totally counterproductive. So I said to the local governments, I say to them again, mayors, county executives, do your job, because that's what's controlling the spread of the virus, and you have to continue doing it. I say to the citizens of this state, who are the ones who accomplished the impossible. They are the ones who reduce that transmission rate. You have to stay smart, keep doing what we're doing, don't let up. Don't think, well, now we're reopening, everything is fine, the weather's better, everything is fine, I hear New York is doing well. It is, but only because of what you're doing. That's been the secret from day one. You stop doing what you're doing, you'll see those numbers turn. So we have to stay smart, stay disciplined. To the protesters, I say, wear a mask. It is the law. I signed an executive order that says it is the law. If you cannot socially distance, you must wear a mask. I also say, especially to my young friends, this is nothing. This is nothing. I don't know what this is. This is like a form of a chin guard. That's what this is. It may be a fashion statement. It may be cool. But this accomplishes nothing. It's not a mask. It's nothing. Well, I'm just taking a break from my mask. No. This accomplishes nothing, right? It's nose and it's mouth. Nose and mouth. For me, the nose and mouth is a big job, covering the nose and mouth. All right? But this is a mask. This is a chin guard. Nobody told you to wear a chin guard. Wear a mask. So I say that to the protesters. I also say to the police, wear a mask. It is the law. And the law is the law for the police. Right? So wear a mask. It is the state law. It's not an option. And stay New York tough, smart, united, disciplined, and loving.
With regard to the first thing, the police, reforming, does that mean that a police force or a locality is required to defund, or can they just reorganize within the department?
They reorganize, redesign, reform, however they see fit, right? This is a new stage. People are still out protesting. You don't need to protest. You won. You won. You accomplished your goal. Society says you're right. The police need systemic reform. That was accomplishment one. Now go to step two. What reform do you want? What do you want? I want systemic reform. Okay. How do you define systemic reform? Let's sit down at a table with the local government, with the police, with the other stakeholders. How do we redesign the police department? We start with this. It's a blank piece of paper. What do you want the police department to be in New York City? Let's design it. Here's a pen. Let's design it. What functions? What's the staff? What's the budget? What should they stop doing? We design it together. We have 9 months to do it. The local government convenes it. The local government convenes all the stakeholders. Take 9 months. It's easier said than done. And pass a law enacting that redesign by April 1. Well, what if we don't? Or if we can't agree? Then you don't qualify for state funding.
But does the agreement, must it include, it sounds like it doesn't. Doesn't have to include defunding. If they reorganize it in a way that's agreeable to the locals, that's okay?
Well, defunding literally means there's no police department, right?
Well, I mean, like New York City wants to move out $1 billion out of the state budget, out of the police budget.
Yeah, that they can, whatever the budget they want is fine. Whatever budget they want, whatever size police force they want. Let them determine that. Let them determine what demilitarize the police means. Let them determine a use of force policy. Let them determine a bias policy. Let them determine a disciplinary process. What should be done with citizen complaints? When do they become public? How about the disposition? Is that public? How long until you have a disposition of a complaint? Whatever they want, community by community, because New York City will want one type of police department. Suffolk will want a different type of police department. Buffalo will want a different type of police department. They're all reacting to different stimuli. What's true across the board is people want a different police department. That's what the protesters were saying. I agree with them. We've been talking about this for 40, 50 years. We're on to the new question. What does it look like? I heard you. You're right. We need systemic reform. Let's do it. Let's design the new police force.
Governor, when you talk about withholding state funding, are you referring to specifically state funding for local law enforcement, which is just 1% of the NYPD's budget, or are you suggesting that education funding and other state aid for non-law
City governments and criminal justice budgets. We want the local governments to do this. New York City has to pass the plan, right? They're going to have to pass a law by April 1 that redesigns the police force. Maybe a new budget, maybe new level of staffing, maybe new disciplinary procedure, maybe new bias procedure, maybe new equipment. Whatever it is, they decide. They redesign their police force. They pass a law for that by April 1. If they don't, which is also coincident with the state budget, as you know, if they don't pass the law, then that city, that police agency will be ineligible for funding.
So you're saying then that all state aid to localities could potentially be withheld if a local government didn't enact some sort of police reforms?
Theoretically, yes. It will, in any case, be a significant amount of funding. There are some funds that are vital for health and human services that we would fund directly. But yeah, it'll be a significant amount of funding to that locality. And look, it's relatively simple. You have 9 months to do it, and you need to bring the community to the table and design your police force. If everybody's happy with everything, then just pass a law that is your current police force. But, as we heard from the protesters, people are not happy. They want change. All right, then figure out what change you want, community by community. That's your new police force. That's your new law, and you have 9 months to do it.
And just to follow up, Governor, sorry, if there's I believe at least 7, 8 bills that already have passed the state legislature. Are you saying that local governments, would you sign those bills? And if not, do you think
I'll sign. I have to review them, but you'll always have state laws governing police. A city is a creature of state government. The state created city governments. So there are state laws on policing that the city cannot circumvent, or a county cannot circumvent. There are federal laws on policing that the state and the city can't circumvent. So they stay in place. A city can add laws to the state and the federal. They can't remove laws from the state and the federal. But the state and the federal laws are not what people are questioning. People are saying we want additional laws, additional measures. People are saying I want the police to stop doing things. I want a new use of force policy. I want a new bias policy. I want a new diversity policy. I want them demilitarized. And that's all done at the local level.
Hey, can you describe what the state's role is gonna be in overseeing this? Like, are you gonna have an office or a commissioner, or how are you gonna?
No
keep
office,
track?
no commissioner, pass the law. We have Department of Criminal Justice Services, but we don't need a new bureaucracy. This is very simple to administer. They have to pass a law. If they don't pass a law, they either pass a law or don't pass a law. They either send us a law or they don't send us a law. If they send us a law, we're not going to second guess their law. All the state laws stay in effect. This is their local laws. If they pass a law, great, they're in compliance by April 1. If they don't pass a law, they don't send it to us, and then they're not in compliance. You want to add something?
I would just say that this isn't about increasing state government's voice in the process or adding more politicians into the process. It's about empowering the communities, right? That's what we're seeing through the protesters. People feel as though there's a lack of accountability within the local police departments and that they're not being heard. This forces the community to the table, and this also makes it so that the mayors are on the line, because the mayors have to facilitate this process with the police departments that report directly to them, and then the local legislative bodies, so the city councils or the county governments. And so you've got the community at the table directly, and then they can demand accountability through the mayors and through the local governments. So it's not about adding additional layers of state government into this process. It's about empowering the local communities and having a process where everyone feels their voice is being heard and there's accountability.
So the only date you guys are concerned with is April 1, passed or no, that's it?
April 1. Let's say it this way. You have these protests going on. I agree with the sentiment of the protesters. And by definition, what the protests say is the relationship is broken between the police and the community. More so in some places, less so in other places. Okay, then it doesn't work. If the relationship doesn't work, the policing doesn't work. It can't work despite the community. I'm going to police you even though you don't want me to. No, then I'm not going to pay you. It comes from my taxes. You work for me, right? Police are public servants. Okay, we have to then come up with a way to fix the relationship. And people want changes in the relationship. It's a little different from place to place. California wants one thing, New York wants one thing, and within New York City wants one thing, Suffolk wants something else. All right, in your local community, put everyone at the table, have the conversation. There's going to be tension in the conversation, I understand that. The politicians will not want to have the conversation because it's going to be a heated conversation. You have to have the conversation. That's what the state's saying. And you have to resolve the conversation. You can't just start a process and say, I'll have meetings, but the meetings go on forever and you never decide anything. You have 9 months, which is plenty of time to do this. And do it intelligently. Find out what is the best innovative policing mechanisms out there, who's doing the smartest things. That mayor, that county executive conducts those meetings, brings in the community. It's a collaborative. That's why the word collaborative. This is not a dictatorial session. Collaborative. You redesign the police. You get the law passed by your local body, so everybody buys in. County executive comes up with it, but the county legislature has to pass it. Mayor comes up with it, but the council has to pass it, so it's fully vetted. Whatever plan the locality comes up with is fine, is accepted. I'm not going to tell New York City what kind of police force they should have. I'm not going to tell Suffolk what kind of police force they should have. It's the local taxpayer who's paying for that. It's the New York City taxpayer who's paying for the New York City police. It's the Suffolk County taxpayer who's paying for the Suffolk County police. It's whatever police you want. They work for you. You're paying them. They come up with a design of a police force. They do it by April 1, fine. They haven't resolved it by April 1. You have to resolve it by April 1, because this is a very bad situation we're in. You need public safety in society. And when you have this tension between the police and the community, this is a bad place for everyone, and it has to be resolved. And it has to be resolved by April 1.
How will this apply to state troopers?
State troopers are going through their own process. There's no municipality involved. Obviously, they're statewide, but that we will do ourselves. Let's take one more, please.
On the reopening, there was a protest yesterday in Williamsburg. They want the sleepaway camps upstate open, the day camps. Can you address that?
Yes, sleepaway camps, look, all of this is a balance, right? Everybody wants to do everything. I want to do everything. So it's a balance of the health risk versus the activity. How many people are in a gathering? What do we do in a restaurant? What do we do in a pool? What do we do at a beach? It's always a balance. Summer camps, we have studied with a great deal of diligence because it involves children, and there are certain new developments with children. We open day camps. That's one level of risk. Sleepaway camps are a much higher level of risk. And after much study and debate and research, our advice in New York State by our health commissioner is the risk is too great to open the summer camps. But Dr. Zucker's here with us, and I'll let him expand.
I know there's been an incredible amount of emotions about this, and as the governor said, we've had to make a lot of tough decisions about the pandemic, with this pandemic. And I have to tell you, this has been one of the tougher decisions, that I've had to make about or pass the message on, pass the advice on. But we've always made decisions based on facts and science on these issues. And I've looked at this from the role as the commissioner. I've looked at it as a role as a pediatrician. I've looked at this as from my role as a father or being a father, and also actually as being someone who has very fond memories of sleepaway camp and in the Catskills, and I understand where people are coming from this. But we have to go back and look at this from the facts. And the facts are that this is a congregate setting. There are many children who are together in a bunk. They're sleeping together in the same area, close by. They are eating in the same common area. They are using a shared bathroom. So social distancing in this situation is just not possible. So what will happen is that the virus will get into one of these camps and it will spread. And someone will say to you, well, how do you know? So it goes back to history, goes back to facts. What we have seen over the course of time is that we've had H1N1, which was a virus back years ago, and it got into a camp, many camps. There were 50 outbreaks of that. That resulted in 1,600 cases of H1N1. We had a mumps outbreak once, one person, 120 cases, and from those 120 cases, we could track 3,500 people who got mumps in multiple states in the area, because people from camps, sleepaway camps, often come from different areas. So we look at this from the basis of facts. We look at this from the basis of science, and that was why this has become a tough decision to grapple with, but that's what it is. And day camps are different because you have a confined number of individuals in one area. And one other thing about that is also that the health system within, or I should say, the health professionals within the sleepaway camp will be easily overburdened if you end up having to quarantine all of those children in a camp. So it's a tough decision, but this is the best public health practice that I can think about.
Thank you guys very much. Thanks. Have a great day.